What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatobito Boxing Show, and a few days delayed with the recap of the Saul Canelo Alvarez and Jaime Munguia. But here we go, and the reason for the delay is that I ended up taking a few days. I actually watched the fight again on Sunday, and then I continued to watch a lot of the post-fight coverage. A lot of claims that were made, and I'm going to touch base on that here real quick on why it took me a few days, because I actually ended up watching the fight again earlier this week, and so twice after watching it live, and just to see if those claims were real. And a lot of interesting things to pull out of this fight, a lot of interesting things surrounding the fight, whether it was pre or post. A lot of it we covered on the pre-fight episode, on the lead-up episode to this fight. And what an interesting weekend it was for boxing. What an interesting weekend. Definitely for this division. Solidified champion, undisputed champ, Saul Canelo Alvarez defends his throne and gives the first blemish, the first defeat of Jaime Munguia's young career by way of unanimous decision. Interesting fight, and of course, so we talk about the fight. Saul Canelo Alvarez successful in his fight. Very interesting that a lot of the lead up was talking about the changing of the guard, the passing of the torch, that this was going to be a Mayweather-Canelo moment, this time Canelo being the teacher, Munguia being the student. Very interesting that got brought up, because when we look at when that fight took place 11 years ago, in 2013, if I remember, Floyd Mayweather walked into the ring with an undefeated record, 44-0, and Saul Canelo Alvarez would step into the ring at 42-0-1, similar to Jaime Munguia, who stepped into the ring with 43-0 record. So could it be that this time Canelo was the Mayweather role, filled the Mayweather shoes, and became the teacher to a young Munguia who will potentially carry boxing in the coming years? Maybe so. Maybe so. It was a 44-0 record on Mayweather's side 11 years ago to 42-0-1 that Canelo stepped into the ring with, where he had a big record, an undefeated record. He had a big record similar to that of Munguia, but got schooled in that fight. Got picked apart by Mayweather, got schooled, got humbled, a little bit embarrassed, to where, if you remember, Canelo was fighting back tears, not just because of his first defeat, but the way that he lost. The way that Mayweather made it look so elementary. And this is something that we saw here during this fight with Canelo and Munguia. Very interesting that Canelo, as the true and tried warrior, boxer, the status that he has, the experience that he has, after having fought and stepped into the ring or shared a ring with top name after top name after top name, whether they're household names or not, he's faced the people that were at the top of the division when he needed to. Everything lined up for him, and the way that he lined it up in his team was perfect. And the experience, of course, is going to come from facing higher level opposition than mid to lower level opposition for the sake of padding up a record. So Munguia stepping into this ring, you guys heard me say it on the lead-up episode, and you've heard me say it for years when I've covered Jaime Munguia, that why do they continue prepping him? Why are they padding up his record? And they're prepping him and prepping him and prepping him, and eventually he's going to burn out, or he's not going to deliver when it's time to step into the ring with a big name. He continued to call out Canelo, continued to call out Golovkin when he was campaigning at 154, then 160, but would never get the opportunity. Instead, he would fight the prior opponents or former opponents of the bigger names. Never got into a fight with Jamal Charlo. Never got into a fight with Bubu Andrade. He passed up on that WBO title when he was a mandatory to Andrade's title at 160. You name it. And this is what we had. This is what we witnessed. That a Jaime Munguia that performed really well, a Jaime Munguia that's exciting, a Jaime Munguia that has zero quit in him, a Jaime Munguia that took the fight to the veteran, to the more experienced, to the more polished fighter in Saul Canelo Alvarez. Refused to quit, refused to back down, got dropped in the fourth round, but was bested, outsmarted, outpointed, outboxed by the veteran fighter in Canelo Alvarez. Canelo defends his throne, as he should have done. No passing of the guard, but very, very similar. I could definitely see the similarities between this fight that we had, because it was a Canelo that refused to quit against Floyd Mayweather and kept going forward even though he was getting popped. Every time he would go in, he would get popped, and then there was nobody there to be found in Mayweather. He would stick and move, pop him several times, counter him beautifully, and get out of the way. And Canelo was a heavier puncher with subpar stamina at that stage in his career, even though he was an undefeated fighter with a heavy record of 42-0 when he stepped into Mayweather's. Not that he was a 9-year-old kid fighting a 15-year-old or a young prospect with a 10-0 record. He was 42-0. This is a similar trajectory that Jaime Munguia has found himself in, where the record states that he should be at a different level than he really is at. Nonetheless, Jaime Munguia has leveled up every single time out for the last 6 times that we've seen him, including this very year. This fight, this loss that he just took to Canelo Alvarez is going to level up Jaime Munguia's boxing knowledge, his IQ, multiple times over. The experience that he just gained were exposed in a losing effort. And what I mean by that is, this is what's going to wake up Jaime Munguia. No matter how much Erik Morales will scream at him from the corner and the training camps and the trying to fix the issues of keeping your gloves up, not opening up your face, not blocking with your face, but rather by movement and with your gloves, parrying punches, getting in and out of the way, feigning in and out, footwork. No matter how much they screamed at him, guess what? If it was exposed during a fight, Jaime Munguia would still manage to find a way to win the fight, whether it was by decision or his power would bail him out and he would knock out the opponents. So all negatives were forgotten and they would continue sharpening up. So when Munguia gets to the point where he keeps hearing the same things and he's polishing on those things or fixing them, there's no urgency behind it because he continues to find a way to succeed in the end. Now that he lost, the exposure of what everybody's been telling him leading up to this point and the critiques of his boxing style are going to be ever so evident. Their message received. You could count on that. The Jaime Munguia now has received the message loud and clear, and now he knows that knockdown happened because it happened on the reset. Canelo Alvarez did not hit your traditional 1-2 punch. He mixed up his 1-2 from the second round on. Rather than go down range, down center range, he mixed up his 1-2, starting it with the left hook to the temple and the follow-up punch, the right hand, down center range. So now he was splitting his guard open by catching him on the outside. And if Munguia blocked that punch, the center would be open. If he didn't, he would get hit on the temple, rocked, and the follow-up punch would come in the form of an uppercut. Very smart by Canelo to be splitting the gloves open, and that's something that comes with time. That's something that comes with expertise, with IQ. Reading the opponent as he's right in front of you, just as you find yourself in the line of danger, in the line of fire. It doesn't mean that Munguia was picked apart, because he was. In the end, the story of the night was that Canelo's defense, Canelo's movement, Canelo's footwork, Canelo's counterpunching was too much for Munguia to be able to implement his plan. His plan flew out the window after the knockdown, and then it became a survival mode. When I started hearing the comments, and this is wrapping up to the beginning of how I started the episode, when I started hearing the comments that Canelo was hurt in the fight, therefore he couldn't stop Jaime Munguia, I had to watch the fight again. Did he get hurt? No. Did he get hit? Yes. The only one that I've seen Canelo, the only fight that I remember seeing Canelo shaken up on maybe 2 fights, where he was hesitant to throw because there was always punches coming right back at him, was Golovkin 1 and his fight against Dmitry Bivol, where he was visually getting shaken, visually getting hurt. Where he just didn't know what else to do other than try to keep the opponent off of him. His punch output was diminished, and therefore he would lose those fights. So the Bivol for sure, the Golovkin, I forget the order and how those fights went. I think that first fight was a draw, right? Where pretty much everybody saw that Canelo lost that fight, and the judges deemed it a draw because it was a crazy scorecard in there. And then the second one, he ended up beating Gennady Golovkin, and the third one, he ended up beating Gennady Golovkin, where the second one seemed like it should have been a draw, and the first one, kind of like the old Barrera Morales, where the wrong guy ended up getting awarded in each one of those fights, with the exception of the third one where Barrera closed the show. Very interesting. For Jaime Munguia, I'm going to tell you this. And so anyways, I'll wrap up to why I saw the fight again on Sunday. I wanted to recap, and I was going to record that night, and I held off. Because I was like, what is it that they saw of Canelo getting hurt that he couldn't stop Munguia? Munguia is just, when have you seen Munguia get dropped? When have you seen Munguia get rocked like that? Sergey Derevyanchenko is the only one that comes to mind. That's the only fight where I think in that fight, it was a 4th round also, or somewhere around there, 4th or 5th round, where I thought he was going to get stopped, where it looked like he was like out on his feet. And somehow he managed to end a round, pull it out, and pull out the victory that night and bring the fight to Derevyanchenko, where he even drops him in the closing round. So I didn't see a hurt Canelo, although I did see a Canelo that got hit. Very valiant by Jaime Munguia in his effort of actually taking the fight to Canelo, not shying away from the moment, from the lights, the glitz, the glamour, the stars were out, the you name it was out there on the crowd, not shying away from that. He took the fight to Canelo, refused to quit, and hit him with some really heavy leather. Punches that have dropped or knocked out prior opponents. Remember, he was stepping into this with a 34 knockout record out of his 43 wins. He's got pop. Punching power that has bailed him out. So he didn't hurt Canelo to where we thought Canelo was nearly out. But that jab that Jaime Munguia started with, the jab that was going straight to the belly and straight to the nose, were stiff jabs. He was hitting Canelo in the body hard. And he was hitting Canelo in the body to where or in the face where Canelo's head would bobble. He would bounce Canelo's head away from his gloves, away from the guard. He was punching Canelo hard. But that wasn't the story. So I wanted to see if I missed something watching it live. And I concluded that Canelo was not hurt at any point. So then I ended up watching the fight again 2 days ago because I ended up seeing some reports that Canelo, including Crawford, ended up mentioning this, and several other trainers and boxers, where they felt that Canelo carried Jaime Munguia rather than knocking him out. That it was a fellow countryman type care that Canelo took, or pity or charity that he took of Jaime Munguia, or felt for Jaime Munguia and didn't want to knock him out. And it popped in my head. I'm like, all right, well, maybe in the 10th, 11th, where Jaime Munguia was visibly gassed, there was times where they were at really close quarters where Canelo would end up moving Munguia, putting his hand on his hip and moving him or switching him in stance. But it was just a matter of the flow of the fight. When I ended up watching it, I'm like, you're just picking anything apart or anything just to discredit Canelo's fight. The only knock is that Canelo didn't stop Jaime Munguia. That he didn't knock him out. When they asked Canelo in the post-fight press conference, he said that he felt he could have knocked out Jaime Munguia, but it just didn't play out that way. And that's exactly what I agree with. He did have the chance. Jaime Munguia survived the 4th round. There was chances around the 9th and 10th round, I believe, where it looked like Canelo was running away with this because he was just starting to put on a boxing lesson on Jaime Munguia. Jaime Munguia that was tired, that was depleted, that was diminished at that point in the fight. And then he got his second wind and brought the fight to Canelo. That was not pity, because at that point, you want to eliminate him. You're like, hey, I let you survive, and here you are trying to hurt me again. You're going out. That wasn't the case. This wasn't a big brother, little brother type thing. It just didn't present itself. And Canelo was unable to knock him out, not because he can't knock him out. It just didn't present itself the way that the fight played out, the way that Jaime kept catching him also. Jaime countered very good, but very slow. Canelo just knows how to pick his spots so well that it was awesome. It was awesome to see a fight where the argument is no longer punch output, a boring fight, a slow fight, not enough action. You had a young guy in Jaime Munguia taking the fight to Canelo, to the veteran, to the champion, not shying away from the moment, continuing to fight even though his plan was out the window. Whatever plan A, plan B, plan C he had, it flew out the window. Freddie Roach had nothing else for him. So he was just trying to build up on whatever little momentum he could get and garner. And it was going to be by way of punching power, by landing something heavy where he could build off of that moment and try to switch momentum in his way against Canelo. Canelo was just too smart, too efficient, and it was evident. We all saw it. And it was a good performance by both, but it was a solid performance by Canelo, one that you can't criticize that it was a boring fight, that it was this, that it was that. He put on a solid performance. So he remains the undisputed champ. I discarded that argument that he was carrying Munguia, and that's the reason why I ended up watching the fight again. Was it the greatest fight I've ever seen? No, definitely not. But it had a lot of action. It was entertaining. It delivered. It delivered. The only other thing would have been if he knocks out Munguia after he drops him in the 4th, and then he would have ended it maybe inside the 6th. I was thinking it was something about the fight was telling me like the 8th round was going to be the key round where the stoppage came. And it didn't happen. And the critique would have been that he's stepping in there with lesser level opposition. Jaime Munguia is a very good boxer, and I'm going to tell you this about Munguia. This level of Munguia that we witnessed in January and this fight that he took to Canelo this past Saturday night would have beat just about anybody that would have been sharing the ring with them on that night. It wasn't good enough to dethrone the champ. It would have been very competitive if it was him against Benavidez. But the same problems lie remain where he continues to leave himself exposed and he's able to get countered. With a David Benavidez, he's not a countering machine. He's not a countering tactician. He comes forward and that would be a car crash waiting to happen. Because both fighters come forward, the countering would be the least of both of their game plans trying to be executed, and it would be all power for as long as it lasts. So this level of Jaime Munguia, who did manage to counter somewhat in the early rounds, and has a very, very good jab that was actually affecting Canelo from just walking him down. He would have given hell to David Morrell. He would have given hell to a Caleb Plant. That would have been very entertaining. I think he would have beat a Demetrius Andrade. I'm holding off on mentioning this other cat in Edgar Berlanga, but we got to mention him because he was all over the news. And apparently he's going to be the opponent that they're picking for Canelo come September. With Turki Al-Sheikh, who's bringing his first event from Saudi Arabia to LA with Crawford Madrimov. at 154 being the main event in August. Apparently, if Crawford is successful, then Turki Al-Sheikh is going to aim for a January showdown between Crawford and Canelo. Of course, Crawford has to be successful over Madrimov first, and then that fight would be negotiated. So we would be looking at Berlanga September, Crawford in January. I hope it doesn't happen that way. Berlanga had run-ins with Caleb Plant. He had run-ins with David Morrell. Somehow he's skipping the WBA line over David Morrell, who has held the smaller version of the WBA title, being the sure shot mandatory for Canelo, and getting skipped, getting overlooked. And Berlanga just skipped the line, and now he's apparently the mandatory for Canelo. After beating who? After doing what? He hasn't accomplished anything. But the marketability of a Mexico-Puerto Rico and this and that type of war, that type of clash, that's where they're going. And David Morrell would be a definite more, or of a bigger threat, in my opinion, to Canelo, stylistically wise, than Berlanga. I think Berlanga gets knocked out in the first half of the fight. I don't think Berlanga gets up if he gets dropped the way Munguia did. I don't think Berlanga beats Munguia. Interesting fight. Interesting fight for as long as it lasts, but I think Munguia stops him. I would eat my words, but I'm not sold. And you guys have heard me say this before. He's got a lot of upside, Berlanga does, but he's already gotten to his head. And the fame has already gotten to his head. And we saw it. And you guys have heard me put episodes behind where I'm not sold. He needs to continue proving himself to the boxing world that he's serious about this. He already tried to bite somebody's ear. He has mental breakdowns amidst the ring when things get tough, when things get hard. But on his last performance, he was humble. And you guys heard me say it on the recap episode. Let's hope that he builds on that moment. And that we continue to see that type of performance and humility from Edgar Berlanga going forward, because if he continues to win, rack up wins, and continues to carry himself that way in a mature way rather than the immature standing that he's had to date, then yes, he will be a formidable opponent who possesses very good boxing pedigree himself. But then we saw him getting in exchanges with Caleb Plant, getting in his face, cursing at him, and then getting in the face of David Morrell, and then guaranteeing that he's fighting in September with Canelo. And it's marketability. He's doing whatever he can to get himself into that big stage. Can he really beat Canelo? I mean, maybe only his family members think that. Does he have a puncher's chance? Absolutely. But Canelo hasn't been rocked in a long time, hasn't been shaken, hasn't been dropped. I guess he did get helped up by the ropes when he fought Cotto's brother, Jose Cotto, early in his career. But that was it. It took me a while to get around to this fight and put it together, because it took me a while to get around to watch those and try to see if I was missing something as to what the claims were being made. We touched base briefly on the undercard. Eimantas Staniones defeated Gabriel Maestre. He retains his WBA title at 147 pounds, so he's a welterweight champ for the WBA, remains undefeated at 15-0, gives the first defeat to Gabriel Maestre of his career. That was a very good fight, very competitive fight. That was one that we talked about on the lead-up episode, where this was a rematch now in the professional rankings. These two guys knew each other from the amateur days, a fight that took place in 2015, if I remember correctly. And it was a very good fight, a disputed result in that, where Maestre felt that Staniones did not beat him, even though he got the decision on that night. And it's a rematch that he was looking at running back for years. Now they got to do it in the professional rankings. They went at each other with everything. It was a great, great fight between those two. Staniones comes out victorious, punched his way to a unanimous decision victory. We saw Mono Ramos, Jesus Ramos, stop the fellow Venezuelan to Maestre and Johan Gonzalez. Stops him in the 9th round. gets back to the winning ways. His only defeat to date of Jesus Ramos is against Erickson Lubin. He improves to 21-1. That's a super welterweight, 154-pound contender. Mario Barrios, very entertaining fight with Fabian Maldana, the younger brother of Marcos Maldana. Very entertaining fight in which, if you looked at their faces at the end of the fight, you would have thought that Maldana did enough to win. His nickname being TNT, he possesses a lot of power where he was damaging Barrios at a different level than what Barrios was inflicting on Maldana. Nonetheless, the output and the boxing and the better combinations, the cleaner punching, the point scoring was happening on behalf of Barrios, where he was racking up rounds, even though he was also accumulating damage. Barrios ends up getting the unanimous decision win. And he managed to drop Maldana in round 3, which was a scary moment for the Argentinian corner, where they felt that Barrios was starting to come on early in the fight and he was going to find the stoppage. Maldana bit down on that mouthpiece and threw down and refused to back up, even though he got hurt several times from there on forward. Refused to back down and took the fight to Barrios, and Barrios was just busted up by the end of the fight. Swollen, eye nearly shut, his left eye, where even though Maldana just didn't put out, there was no output from him. It was very little, and punches that were too far in between to be able to get something going. Unanimous decision win for Mario Barrios. He remains the interim WBC champ at 147 pounds, and who knows, maybe in the near future we'll have Barrios against Stanionis. Both PBC fighters. Should be an easy fight to make. And then the other fight that was of note, that was really interesting, was Brandon Figueroa against Jesse Magdaleno. If you remember, Jesse Magdaleno missed weight by 2 pounds, so he could not win. He could win the fight, but he could not win the title. And Figueroa, similar to Barrios, holds a interim version of the WBC, but this division is a featherweight fight. So Brandon Figueroa is a WBC interim champ to Ray Vargas, who's the full version WBC champ at featherweight at 126. Jesse Magdaleno gets stopped with the same punch that Brandon Figueroa stopped Luis Neri in several years back at 122. That same left punch to the ribs that just bent Jesse Magdaleno with 1 second left in the round. In the 9th round, as it was ending, 1 second left to end, and he bends him over with that, just folds him with that left shotgun type delivery that he ended up dropping on Jesse Magdaleno's ribs. Left hand shot by Brandon Figueroa, which did the same effect to Luis Neri when they faced off each other, and he was the original blemish that Luis Neri held in his record. Amazing shot by Brandon Figueroa, 25-1, still the interim and looking to get into the ring with Ray Vargas, who retained his title earlier this year when he walked away with a draw against Nick Ball. And they were on the undercard of Zhilei Zhang, Joseph Parker, if I recall correctly. So very interesting card for Canelo. What do we have? The 200 million ask if they want him to face David Benavidez. Air of Money seems to be coming down the way, with Turki Al-Sheikh already making his presence here in the U.S. He would be the one that everybody's looking at to make that offer and make that fight happen with the $200 million offer because they got the money to throw around. But if they're looking, Turki Al-Sheikh was all over social media saying that he's aiming for Crawford Canelo in January with a successful Crawford in August, which would be the inaugural Riyadh season card in the U.S. Multiple promoters going to be involved there. Virgil Ortiz fighting on the co-main event against Tim Tszyu on that one, so Golden Boy being involved there as well, as his Matchroom, as his PBC. So for Canelo, the route right now that everybody's reporting is Berlanga September, Crawford January. No guarantees yet because Crawford still has to fight in August, and nobody really wants to see the Berlanga fight. There is David Morrell and Berlanga that should be able to get it on to unify the WBA version or that WBA title and a mandatory against Canelo. That would be the safe route. A Berlanga Plant, Berlanga guaranteed to give Plant a shot and to fight Plant if he doesn't get the Canelo call. Is there going to be a September fight against Benavidez? We don't know, but that's the one that we're all clamoring for, and I think that's it. I think that's it for Canelo. If he fights David Benavidez, there's nothing else for him to do or prove at 168. And it could potentially be a 2 or 3 fight deal, where if he does lose, he would of course want to run it back, and you would have a moneymaker giant and a multi-fight contract between him and Benavidez. Or if it's a close fight, but he retains by decision with these wide, crazy cards that we're accustomed to seeing, then obviously they would clamor for a rematch, and then Benavidez and Canelo 2 happens, and blah, blah, blah. So that would be a big moneymaker that would probably lead for another year, year and a half. If that fight did take place in September. Who else is there? David Morrell, Canelo. That would be entertaining. Berlanga, I don't want to see it. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Leave me a comment on that. Touch base with me if you guys do want to see that. Because for the sake of eliminating somebody, I mean, let him build up his career. He's still young. I don't want to destroy his career yet. He's got a lot of upside to him. But let him get in there with some decent names. Maybe fight Boo Boo Andre, who's a small 168. But that would probably be a better fight for him. Even Gabe Rosado, if they want to do that fight. Berlanga and Gabe Rosado, who says he's willing to come out of retirement to fight Edgar Berlanga. Or Berlanga Munguia. Other than that, there's not really too many other opponents. I think Christian Mbilli is also a big runner-up. And that's it. David Morrell, Benavidez are the only ones that I'm looking for. For Munguia, the upside is huge. His stock, even though he comes away with a first loss of his career, his stock is not dropping at all. If anything, it got even higher now. And he's going to be a game opponent for any of those top names that I'm mentioning right now, including, imagine a Caleb Plant Munguia card. But I would love to see Munguia and Berlanga in his next outing. I think that would be a great September fight, with Canelo opting to do whatever he wants or sit out the rest of the year. I don't think he will. I think he'll fight in September. We just don't know against who. So I'll leave you guys with that. Entertaining Saturday, and of course, plenty more boxing to come. I'll go ahead and touch base on the other fight, which is a huge event. The bantamweight division got shaken up in the morning of the Canelo Munguia fight. Bantamweight division gets shaken up, which ends up affecting Monday. Monday also had a Monday morning, which is like a 4 a.m. fight between Naoya and Luis Neri. Entertaining fight, one of the great fights and performances of the monster Inoue career. And so because of the results of what happened Saturday morning and then Monday morning, the bantamweight division got shaken up, the super bantamweight division got shaken up, and now potentially a new entrant into the featherweight division after the results of Monday morning and the whole weekend, after the end of the whole weekend overall. So I'll touch base with that. That'll be the very next episode. I'll let you guys all go, and thank you guys again for tuning in. Take care of yourselves and have yourselves an amazing night. Take care.